Thank you, Sanjeev. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ramkumar. Ram, I'm a senior partner with Cedar and IBS Intelligence. For the purposes of today, I'm also happening to be the moderator for panel 1, which I would like to start with. And we have an interesting panel today, which is banking in an increasingly digital world. And I do have the honor of introducing eminent panelists today. We have with us Dr. Harale, Vice President and Head of Cybersecurity Vertical at Reserve Bank of India IT. If I can have Dr. Harale on the stage. Dr. Harale comes with more than 25 plus years in the industry, particularly in IT and information security, data privacy and cybersecurity, doctorate in cybersecurity and an MTech in computer engineering. Looking forward to listening to you, sir. Our next panelist is someone who's been more than 25 plus years in the industry as well. So it's a very strong advocate of digital banking and its impact particularly in SME. I'm going to quote from one of his mantras that he posted in the social media, and it goes like this: imagination is everything. If we can imagine a future, we can create it. Please put your hands together to welcome Shekhar Bhandari, President, Global Transaction Banking at Kotak. Welcome, Shekhar. Our next panelist is someone who's also started his career with RBI. More importantly, he was the head of product development at NPCI. We're talking about UPI payments today, and we have someone who actually was heading product development at NPCI. The tagline on his profile is also interesting, and I'm very it's important that I quote it here because it's going to be relevant to the discussion. He says, "Trust is the foundation of payments." Please welcome Vipin Surelia, Head of Risk Services, India and South Asia at Visa. Welcome, Vipin. May I also have on stage the Chief Revenue Officer of Cloud4C, Deep. Deep started his career in '93, worked across IBM, HP, and SAP. And he was formerly the President and Managing Director for SAP India. Welcome, Deep. We also have a very, very important member on the panel today who's joining us from many miles away. Can we have Felipe on the screen? Hi, Felipe. Felipe is the CIO and Management Board member at Revolut Bank. He's been 25 plus years in the industry. He was formerly with Santander Group and many global IT firms. More importantly, Felipe is a mentor and an advisory board member of Cedar-IBSi FinTech Venture Capital. So thank you, panelists. So I am going to start this discussion. I mean, obviously the topic is banking in an increasingly digital world. So may I actually maybe start with you, Shekhar. How do you define this quote-unquote increasingly digital world, and particularly in the context of banking and the rapid transformation it's going through?
I think I start from what I used to do as a student, and I used to go to a branch to open a bank account. Used to take around 15 days to open a bank account. It required, I think, a good amount of training and learning for me to understand and then do a transaction. If I wanted probably 2,000 rupees at that point of time, I'll have a check return, take the check, go to the branch, stand in a queue. If it is a modified branch, will have a token. Otherwise, I'll wait for my turn, which can take 20 to 25 minutes to get the 2,000 rupees. And I'll be delighted at the end of getting the 2,000 rupees. And just see, I think, the way we have moved across now. You try to open a bank account in 3 minutes. You open probably 25,000 and 30,000 of them every day. I think as an institution, I can tell you, and many institutions do it. You would like to not go to branch for at least 365 days because you may not have the purpose to visit over there. Unless and until you are a business banking customer and you need to have a few documents to be submitted, I think the physical presence actually may not be required to be over there. You can do everything. If you are borrowing, the branch people will come at your place more for assessment. This again I call is the mid-traditional world rather than the proper, the new digital world, where I think that thing also may not be required. And what has happened and how it has changed comes to the fundamentals which has changed across the world. I still say a few developed countries may see, I think, India significantly ahead in terms of their thought. And it is a factor of the infrastructure, the rails, and I think the stack, I think, which has got created.
Brilliant.
I use a few letters, I think either A, B, C, D or JAM, JAM, and both are important. Since you're coming from the breakfast, I think JAM becomes more important. And over there, you will say J stands for Jan Dhan. I think when you had very less number of people, less than 30% who used to have a bank account, and you had a Jan Dhan scheme where the number moved to 65%. You actually doubled the entire take, and with the increasing population. A stands for Aadhaar, which is the, and generally I think when 1.3 billion people have a digital identity, probably I think 50 odd million which get transacted every day. I think that's where Aadhaar get used in various forms. I can lead to the end. And there are 5 million authentications which happen every day in terms of eKYCs in various forms, is where I can tell you the scale of Aadhaar. And M stands for mobility. I think Sanjeev very rightly covered. I think he has seen all the transformations and revolutions and has been instrumental in even guiding, I think, many of them, including big Indian partners, the way I think mobile came to India. You will realize that something which used to be considered as a privilege, I think, became a necessity. And from a necessity, India has the highest number of smartphones as well. Forget, I think, the world. And why? Because that becomes the instrument to transact. That becomes the instrument for entertainment. That becomes the instrument to, I think, to do whatever you want, whether it is buying, whether it is hearing, whether it is speaking, whether it is even as good as entertainment. I think your entire IPL part, I think, if one were to see, and when you have 1.6 to 1.8 crores customers watching it every day, you say that I think it is thanks to the three parts, and mobility becomes an important partner in trying to take it further. I complement this with A, B, C, D. I think A for me is the way the AI world or the artificial intelligence, I think, came into part. It was always there. I guess we come from an Indian community, and think we like making codes well. We decipher it well, and the world thinks that I think we understand it significantly better. It is there in our genes, so I can say artificial intelligence also I think comes as a natural advantage. And when you have that piece in now branded as a good tool, I think you are able to move to the next level. I think B stands for a blockchain. I think a future technology, but a solution which is I strongly believe in. It's the technology, the security, and the scalability, I think, which is possible. I think the C stands for cloud. I think it has changed the way the world has seen in last 5 years, and I think the way the future is going to be. And I think D stands for data, and the entire, I think the big data part which happened. And a combination of JAM and ABCD is where I can call the world has become digital, India has become totally digitized. Were there versions of JAM and etc. in the other parts of the world? I think M was there. I think A was there. I think J relatively, I think, is there, not there, but it is the stack, I think, which I can call the regulatory framework, which helps to combine, I think, ABCD with the JAM.
Wonderful, yeah. This is a new lexicon for this, the whole day's discussion, I would assume, yeah. This ABCD that you put on the table. I could see Deep is already enjoying, cloud is in his genes. So you could see that the definition of cloud is part of the lexicon. But I have to, before I come to you, Deep, and I have to take this to Vipin first, right? I mean, Shekhar talked about the rails that have been put on the, the infrastructure that is actually creating this whole drive. And one of the topics we're talking about today is how payments has actually been driving the digital banking agenda, right? So if you were to actually share your views on how this whole digital payments has been the cornerstone of this transformation journey, your take on that.
Thank you. And as Shekhar shared his journey, so I also started my journey in the last century. The only instrument I saw was check. He went to a branch, I went to work at RBI where I used to work in a check shop. We processed, and guys, you'll not believe it, over 1 million checks in Mumbai alone. And when there were dividend warrants, interest warrants issued, when salaries had to be paid, we worked almost 24 hours. There was no ECS, there was no EFT, there was no NEFT, and you would not even have heard words of like Comet, BankNet, etc. There was no RTGS, there was no LinkedIn, there was no Twitter, the only airlines, I think, was Air India at that time. Last but not the least, and he spoke about ABCD, there was no chat GPT. And there were no apps. Today, when I bank, the only bank I know is 811 or iMobile.
Oh, I love it.
I don't know, and he called it outright. He said 365 days a customer doesn't visit a bank branch. I have never visited a bank branch. I have never visited a bank branch in ICICI Bank. I have never visited a bank branch in Kotak. And now I am part of that 3 minutes experience of bank account opening. So for me, banking is app. But what do you do with that app? And that's where what Ram was mentioning, the payments come in. So while you have created a front end, you have allowed a customer to take birth in the banking ecosystem, there is a reason and a rationale. So he has to invest, he has to pay. So payments become the glue or a connective tissue across what we as individuals do, what our organizations at the end of the month do, and we love that single credit we see in our bank account at the end of the month. And Shekhar is again a great proponent of SME business. What we are now seeing is, while the retail has evolved, it's the B2B business which is getting more hungrier for digital payments. And it's just not domestic, it's cross-border is what we are seeing. 3 key trends that we are also seeing from a payment perspective, all driven by digital banking. We are still finding more and more people coming in the ecosystem, in the infrastructure. And for them, inclusion is a very empowering or a powerful tool. That's one. Second, we are also seeing, and when we talk about users coming in, we are not just talking about people like you and me. We are talking about merchants, and that's why I mentioned to LinkedIn's, Twitter's, that blue tick did not exist. It's a new opportunity which is being created. So those are the kind of things that are happening. The merchant itself, and COVID did provide a big push to digital payments and digital banking. They were also trying to become a part of the digital ecosystem. So they are also very much there. We are seeing new payment flows. It's just not about cards, it's about QRs, it's about mobile payments. It's about you feeling very safe and secure just to tap, scan a QR instead of handing over your card, and that's where trust becomes important to the merchant. So that's the second segment that we are seeing which is evolving. And it's just not merchant, it's just not individuals, it's government also who has to pay and receive money. And they are also looking at the flows. Again, front end is banks like Kotak, ICICI, State Bank of India, and government either being able to disburse money, which is happening in millions of records in DBT, or being able to collect money for the services that they offer. While you are traveling on a toll, so you just go through a toll highway today without having to stop, take out cash, etc. How it is impacting the banking industry, and it's a big impact happening both on front end and back end. So I need to create an app where I need to start giving those features to the user. And then I also need to start looking at my back end on what data to store. Do I have a consent? How do I use that data? So all those data consent architecture debates are still evolving. It's not a closed chapter as yet. That's one transformation we are seeing, which is happening in banking. The other we are seeing is partnerships. So there are fintechs, there are old legacy banks who have seen many evolutions of how banking has been through and how that partnership can grow. Third is to drive home the inclusion, how I can use that data. So while on the front end, there are new flows which are emerging, from a banking perspective, what is also becoming important is how do I leverage on partnerships, how do I leverage on technology. Last but not the least, as users, we have got used to a 24/7 into 365 days banking. So while Shekhar spoke about JAM in a different context, JAM is also becoming a peak period when banks are seeing transactions hitting, when the IPL match starts, or when there is any event which starts happening. So how do they cover themselves from a 5/9 perspective? So that's another challenge or an opportunity that is emerging to banks and service providers.
Thank you. Vipin, you touched about inclusion, you talked about environment that enables safe and secure transactions, right? And I'm going to take that question to you, Dr. Harale. You know, we are talking about, like Shekhar mentioned, we have, close to 2,500 UPI transactions per second is what I'm told is we actually recording, right? And we're talking about having them seamless, talking about convenience and experience for the customer, but we also need to keep the environment safe and compliant. So how does a bank, and what would you think the bank should do to actually ensure we balance between safety, compliance, and what would be seamless and customer experience?
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me on this panel. Basically, the question is very true. So 3-minute journey is very important. Same time, keeping customer trust or consumer trust is very important, and that lies with the bank or the institutions. The infrastructure part, I think everybody is trying to put forward these baby steps to enhance the digital security, the consumer security, platform security, everything is they're trying to build. But doing all this, who is going to give the confidence that yes, as on today, we are safe and secure? So it is a continuous monitoring is required. The seriousness while meeting the compliance requirements. So every regulator is putting up the cybersecurity framework, data security framework, privacy, everything is there. But implementation part is the missing link, which I feel, this is my neutral opinion I'm trying to share. We are always trying to showcase the, fully compliant. So fully compliant means is that we are trying to achieve everything is safe and secure, or we have to do something plus, right? So one important aspect to the compliance is, yes, regulators are watching. It could be the IDA is there. There are various regulators. The RBI is there. They are continuously monitoring the compliance of your security, compliance of your systems in line with the requirements. But I think if you look back and see a lot of cyber frauds are happening, right? How we are ensuring that each and every consumer is not in the tier 1 city, tier 2 city. So we are reaching out to the individuals, every consumer which is sitting last mile. So I think awareness has to be driven in a very proper way, continuous way. The continuous modus of operandi has to be communicated. I mean, just 2 days back, I heard is a technical guy whose brother is lost 3 lakhs rupees. So what exactly happened? Just an example I'm just trying to quote here. For a day, his SIM card is disabled. And within the 24 hours, the entire money has gone out of his bank account. When he visited the Airtel and the gallery, he found that his SIM was not working. And they have just enabled the card and immediately started receiving the SMS. So modus of operandi is continuously changing because of digital transformation and the technology evolution, dynamism in the technology. The same technology is available to the fraudsters. So, banking as an enterprise, we have to look at the aspect, what is the landscape, how threat landscape is changing from consumer perspective and keeping the compliance intact. So we have to do a lot of things. Maybe we should look at zero trust as a networks, trust but verify. Just the simple things we should start doing.
I think this consumer is the key here, right? I mean, there's expectations of consumers that are driving the whole directions in which banks are moving, and that's my question to you, Felipe, and I want to bring Felipe into this conversation. I think we are talking about digital banking, and a lot of experiences that customers are expecting is actually changing the way banks are looking to, realign their offerings and how they take it to the customers. Your take on this, Felipe, from a global perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be in this top-notch quality panel. So I would like to refer to 3 principles, and they are really basic principles. Sometimes with all this technology and digitalization, we forget what are the key priorities we need to do in banking. So the first one, which is probably the most important one, is as a customer, I want the banks to serve my needs. Okay, so banks should solve real problems that people have in their everyday lives. Sometimes we thought, the problem with so much technology and so much you can do with technology is that you could do a lot of fancy features that perhaps they are not really adding as much value as they should. For that, then you need to design your products and processes around the customer experience, around the customer needs, so that you make sure that you serve them well. And also, now with technology, you need to understand as a bank the life cycle events, the particular experiences that customers are going through, because we see how financial services are embedded into those life cycle events, be it buying your dream house or travel internationally or shop around for different insurances. So it is important to understand that experience and also embed the financial services, your products and services within those experiences. This is principle number 1, serve customer needs. A second one is around data. And this is not about artificial intelligence, ChatGPT. It's about using data smartly and efficiently. So things like don't ask me for data I have already provided, or don't ask me for data that you can actually deduct from my interactions with you as a bank. That data that you can extract from how I use the app, how I use the web, my geolocation, the patterns that perhaps are followed on a monthly cycle. And also use that data to make your offering relevant for me as a customer. And where possible, where sensible, try to personalize that offer. The great potential that being able to store and process, to understand the data and build models around it, it's huge. But then you need to do the investment. You need to do the solutions to actually understand that data, gather it, curate it, and then use it for a real purpose, in this case, to understand customer better and propose them more relevant solutions. And also the data can be used in that sense to make the experience seamless, to make the experience much simpler for the customer. So and this leads me to the third principle, which is a very basic one as well. Keep it simple. Don't build fancy, complicated, long processes. Keep it simple in the sense that it's convenient, it's very intuitive, it feels even natural to go through the process, but also very important, coming back to the principles that were mentioned at the beginning, make sure that there is no service disruption. Nowadays, in the digital channels, you need to be 24/7. There is no room for planned maintenance or for periods of time where your services or your app is down because you are doing some intervention in technology. No, modern technology allows for you to have, a continuous service, and customers expect that. They don't want the app not to be working. They don't want some specific features not to be available at any given time, wherever they are using the channel of their choice. So as part of that, keeping it simple, the ideal situation could be one where actually the financial services, the banking products, are so embedded into the experience that the customer is going through that it's even transparent, that sometimes you don't even realize you are consuming a financial service. So if you are buying, I don't know, a travel package, you are going internationally, the best possible way to make the payment is one where it takes place automatically, taking your payment, your choice of preferred payment, perhaps with an account or a card that you have already provided somewhere else when you sign up for the service. And then when you check out for your travel package, the payment is taken automatically, perhaps using some data to authenticate that is already kind of embedded in the app where you have authenticated yourself. So if you keep it as simple and as natural that actually the customer does not even realize that is consuming a financial service, well, that would be the best ideal scenario, at least from a customer point of view. So as you see, we are talking about basic principles that technology and the digital world makes much easier to fulfill or to meet. So serve customer needs, use the data smartly and efficiently, and third, keep it simple.
I think that's a very insightful, piece of advice, I guess, for a lot of people here in the audience. Don't ask for data that you already have with you. Keep it simple and keep the customer needs at the center of the discussion, front and center of the discussion. I think that's if I was to take that part of the discussion to you, Deep, and I think a lot of the expectations that Felipe just talked about is from a consumer standpoint and apply for every customer, right? And you've obviously been engaging a lot with, quote unquote, the B2B segment or the institutional segment, if I may say, corporate and SMEs. How do you see the digital banking opportunities unfolding, to customers in an institutional angle, and more particularly because I do know that from your yesteryears in SAP and so on, you could see a lot of the point that Felipe made of don't ask for data that already exists becomes so relevant in today's context. So your take.
So I think, thank you again for the panel. I think it's a very enriching discussion. And I was just reflecting back, and I think I'm the only non-banker. My attach shows that. So I hope it's not any offense to anybody. And I'm not going to talk about technology. I think there's one thing, we talk a lot about digital technology and things like that. But fundamentally, I believe, what Felipe said is exactly this, what is happening. It is about the experience. How you're transforming the experience, how you're that includes your citizen, if you're in government services, G2C, your consumers, if you're into banking, or your customers, if you're into B2B business. And to change that experience, right, like asking for data KYC 5 times, right, for 5 different business lines, right, getting the same validation done. I might have, as a B2B company, I might have 5 business lines. But my customer set could be the same. The persona could be the same. I might end up asking the same persona through different divisions 5 times the same information. So is that improving that experience in the B2B world? Similarly, when it comes to payment, because obviously there is a lot of risk and controls you have to maintain. But how do you not take that to your consumer? And when you have to deliver to the consumer, it is not just about the point in which you interact with the consumer or the customer. It is also your internal processes. And I'm also a great believer that it starts with the internal journey, not just with the customer journey or the consumer journey. Because as an employee, what is the experience you go through when you have to, let's say, in a B2B situation, when you have to do a purchase requisition for a office equipment? Is it a same 45-day process or 90-day process? Right. Well, again, you have to go through all the checks and balances. So how do you transform your entire employee experience, your ecosystem experience, right, and your consumer experience? It is about taking everybody along in the journey. And in my sense, if I take an outside-in view, as a service provider in the banking industry, I think the entire ecosystem has to evolve to provide a consistent experience of the provider, of the main player of the ecosystem, and the entire consumers and subscribers.
So it's not one entity, but an entire ecosystem at play here.
The entire ecosystem has to be upgraded and be provided the thing, including your internal stakeholders.
Got it. So Deep, I guess I'm going to actually have my final round of questions, but I like to do it slightly differently. I'm going to have one question, and this is the same question to all the panelists. And if you actually were to actually make a prediction, I'll start with you, Deep, on how the outlook would be in the next, let's say, 2 to 3 years. And what would you think we all should be watching out for? What would your take be?
Again, I'll give you an outside-in perspective. A lot of things has happened, as everybody knows, on the retail banking side, on the consumer banking side. But the entire B2B, whether it is a B2B commerce, B2B payments, I think a lot needs to happen. And the opportunities are huge, right? Whether it is simplifying the effort while keeping it secure. I know, in B2B, the risk of threats, risk of getting hacked is also higher, this thing, because of transaction volumes and things like that. If I have to say the entire area of whether I'm a buyer, whether I'm a seller, whether I'm a consumer, whether I'm a user, that entire journey of a B2B can significantly improve over the next couple of years, and that's the biggest opportunity.
Name of the game to be B2B for the next 2 to 3 years.
I personally believe, because a lot has happened on the B2C side of it, especially in India.
Right.
The B2B side of it, from a banker's perspective, is a big opportunity, and which can be pretty much be unlocked.
Interesting. Felipe, what would your take be? The outlook in the next 2 to 3 years, and if you had to pick what you think would actually be something we should watch out for?
Yeah, so it's always difficult to predict, no? But I think I will go for something around data, using the data smartly and widely. So let's say someone would call it perhaps machine learning and artificial intelligence, but these are perhaps buzzwords, no? So it's about going beyond that hype of ChatGPT, OpenAI, and actually find real use cases, define them, develop them, and extend them to a place where they can deliver great value for customers. We're already seeing some areas or domains where this is being done, and the potential is great. So look at credit decisioning, for instance. We are seeing how this is being applied for credit scoring for people, for consumers. But talking about B2B, well, perhaps we will see the same being applied for small businesses, where we can do credit decisions in an automated way, in a real time, using all the pool of data that exists from so many different sources, or detecting fraud in real time, or helping prevent financial crime. So I think that, for me, one of the spaces to watch out is these real use cases where, building data models, using the vast quantity of data that is available, can actually deliver real value for customers, both consumers and businesses.
Interesting. The real unlocking of the value of data is what you see as the area to look out for. Vipin?
So I don't know whether you are trusting me to crystal gaze. So, and with ChatGPT there, and my college-going son comes and tells me he got this answer from ChatGPT. Very difficult, and I would not want to hazard presenting a Mona Lisa with a black border to this group at least. On the opportunity side, I'll go back to what Felipe said, and it is again linked back to what I fundamentally believe. Trust is the foundation of payments, which can happen in two ways. So one is, because we are getting new users, customer experience simplification is very important. And we collectively as a group who understands payments slightly better than what we believe the billions of device holders doing banking do, we should continue to create awareness for them. We should continue to educate them on the perils of what can go wrong. That is one. Second, we also believe the pie is much, much bigger. So there is an opportunity while we compete, and I speak on behalf of all networks and our ecosystem partners, we have to collaborate. And trust me, we do collaborate today also, but I am looking forward for an opportunity to collaborate more, especially on the security and risk side. So it's not a shame that you got hit by malware. It can happen to any one of us. And trust us, as networks, our first port of calls are two, whenever any incident happens on a single network. So we reach out to our ecosystem partner and to regulators and Dr. Harale's team. That is one. Second, we also reach out to each other and say, this is what has happened on our network. Has it happened on your network, or is it going to happen on your network? So creating that foundation of trust, deepening it, is a big opportunity I see in the next 2 to 3 years.
Very interesting. Creation of awareness, collaboration, and being sensitive to what could actually happen, not just to your neighbor, but to yourself, right? Thank you, Vipin. Shekhar.
So if I were to paint a picture a bit longer, I'll
Please.
say that the credit to GDP ratio in India is around 47%, and probably 2030 odd, I think you should move around 100%. And in my mind, that will have the significant opportunity for everything which I spoke of, which is ABCD, but largely for, I think, data. And in order to move that path, for India to grow from 3.5 trillion to, I think, 8 odd trillion around that time, it will be important that we take care of security, we take care of privacy, we take care of, and we ensure the trust part goes up. What we saw in last 3 months was a significant lesson on trust and on risk management. And in my mind, it will be, I think, rightly probably echoed by Doctor as well, that for them, I think you will innovate, you will simplify, you will use the best tech to ensure that you are able to solve the customer issues. And there is a business case and a business opportunity for that. With whatever is available, to have a structural way to address security, to address the trust part, will be a joint responsibility across of all the players in ecosystem, including educating the customer. And that will remain, if you were to ask me, the biggest agenda, as starting to educate and be responsible.
I think it's symbiotic, isn't it? It flows one into the other. The more you educate and more you create, it actually helps in augmenting. And I think that reference you made, Shekhar, to this credit GDP ratio going from 47% to 100%, I mean, that's like a very critical takeaway. That's the real proof of the pudding. If we were to do all of the stuff that we talked about, B2B and data and the security, then you should be resulting in that kind of an impact.
And the number of people who will be earning more than $35,000, which is again taken, I think it will rise 5 times in that time period from probably, I think, 5.2 million to 25 odd million. And for a per capita income for India, I think etc. will rise again 2.5 times, from $2,500 to probably $5,500. So I think all these things mean that people need to be more educated, and you take care of privacy, security, trust. The world is moving to a situation where brand, I think people are happy to trust if tech backs you. People will move away from the brand. But it is important that you are agile, but I think remain trustworthy for a longer period of time.
Very interesting. Be aware and beware. Dr. Harale.
Yeah, I think more and more the digital landscape is increasing. So maybe financial institutions should focus on using the cyber threat intel proactively, so that will not impact your consumers and the customers. I think that's because ultimately the entire assets being kept with the banks, and they know that it is safe, it is in safe hand. So proactively, because cyber fraud or cyber risk is going to be a business risk. It is business risk now. So we should have the various plans and protection mechanisms, so which will increase the trust value, which will increase the brand value.
Trust is the foundation, as going back to your definition, Vipin. All right. I guess we will, that interesting takeaway, if I was to summarize, I guess, we were to say that if you have to have the foundation of trust, it allows you to actually have a more meaningful exchange of data that actually is used without having to be repeating it, and that being put to use with what we see in B2B context, which obviously is the name of the game in the next 3 years. But you got to be watchful of what could actually be security concerns that we should be sensitive to. I think a very, very interesting takeaway from this discussion sets the tone for the rest of the day. So thank you, panelists, for being with us today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.